just put the book on the stand over there.
All right.
And we'll get to that in a few minutes. Okay, where be my sticks? Oh, I must have put... Actually, it should be in my backpack. I got into this thing where I have certain sticks that I use because when I started... Early on when I started doing this, and I was sharing sticks with people and stuff, I get sick a lot. And so I was like, I gotta fix this. Yeah, so now I use my sticks. I don't let people touch my sticks, and I don't touch their sticks. And that actually increased my health significantly. Okay, well, all right. So from scratch, you got a drum set in front of you.
Yeah.
Are you aware of the names of all the different drums?
So these are the tom-toms.
Yeah, you have 3 tom-toms. You have 2 that are suspended over the bass drum.
Okay.
And those are called rag toms. And then the one on the floor, we call that a floor tom.
Okay. And the snare drum.
That's the snare drum. And then the bass drum.
And these are, I don't know what the hi-hats or the crash are.
Yeah, so the hi-hat is a set of 2 cymbals. There's a cymbal there and a cymbal under there. And this whole mechanism can be open and closed with the foot. We're just going to turn it off because we don't need to do that for what we're doing today.
Okay.
But, what it does is when you push the pedal down, it moves it up and down.
Okay.
For different sounds. And then over here, this is simulating a crash cymbal. So a crash cymbal is really for that explosive crash sound you hear.
Okay.
And then this one is simulating a ride cymbal, which is more for playing on top of the cymbal kind of patterns.
Okay. So is it the size of the things that determines if they're a crash or a ride?
Size is a factor, but it's not the end-all of how you make that determination. A crash cymbal is usually thinner, it's usually smaller, but it can be big.
Okay.
A ride cymbal is usually bigger, usually a lot thicker, but it doesn't have to be.
All right.
So it really kind of boils down to how the cymbal's made and the kind of sound you're wanting to get it to produce. Now, you can take a crash cymbal and ride on it. There's nothing wrong with doing that. You can take a ride cymbal and crash on it. They're just not necessarily designed for those purposes. And if you even just took some time, like even out in the store when you had time, or any music store anywhere, and just check out the different cymbals, you can hear the difference between all the cymbals. And then some of those cymbals do cross both. They might be called a crash ride, so it's sort of designed to do both. But as you get progress in drums and become more musical and get more experience, and you start becoming picky about the kind of sounds that you like and that you don't like, and that's when you start honing in on particular things.
Okay.
But at this level, it doesn't matter. Usually a crash and a ride is sufficient. And then they make all kinds of other cymbals for different sound effects. Probably the most common, or maybe 2 most common cymbals for sound effects besides crash cymbals and ride cymbals and hi-hats, of course, would be splash cymbals. Splash cymbals are just little crash cymbals, basically. Usually 4, 6, 8, 10 inches, 12 inches sometimes. And then, beyond 12 inches, usually considered a crash, but it's basically the same thing. It's just small. And then they have something called China cymbals, and those are those cymbals where they're usually kind of big, like a ride cymbal, but it'll bow out, but instead of stopping like a ride cymbal will do, it'll flip back in, like that. And then you actually turn it upside down when you play it, because when you have this shape to it, if you hit it on the edge, you're going to mess up your sticks, and you're probably going to crack the cymbal, so they flip it over, so it does more of this. So you're hitting more of the curved part.
Huh.
And those are the most common cymbals, but they do make all kinds of other crazy cymbals with different sounds, and some of them even have like holes and things cut in them.
I've seen some of those in some of the books.
Some of them are gimmicky, but they do change the sound, and some people like the differences in the sound. So now that we know the different names of the drums, next thing I like to do is have you turn around and face the drum set.
Okay.
You will see 3 pedals there. I'm more concerned about your right pedal.
So my right foot should go on the...
Yes, your right foot should go there, and your left foot should go on the hi-hat pedal.
All right.
Yeah, and then that other pedal that we're not going to use today, that's another bass drum pedal. It has an extension that'll hit the bass drum.
Okay.
So you can use both feet for the bass drum.
Okay.
But that's like not something you usually get to immediately. You get into that down the road. It's more of a intermediate sort of thing.
So this is a basic setup, Tobin. So because I just messed around with the boys' kit in the garage, and I didn't know how to set it up. So would you configure it like this with the snare sort of?
That's a good point, actually. I was just going to get to that.
Okay.
So here's the next step, is like what I do with my feet. Now, right now we have a drum set that's already set up, and we have to put our body into it.
Right.
But usually when I'm setting up a drum set, I'll take my seat and I'll put it where I want it first, and then and the approximate location of where the drum set's going to be. And then the first thing I do is I put my feet, my legs, where they're comfortable.
Okay.
And then I build the kit to me, to where my body is. Because obviously everybody's different heights and have different lengths of legs and arms and all that kind of stuff. So in this situation, we're not building a kit to us, we're building our body into the kit. So what I would tell you to do is set yourself up so your right foot's on the bass drum and your left foot is on the hi-hat, and then scoot your seat as close or as far away as you feel comfortable with your legs. Don't worry about what it looks like, worry about how it feels.
Comfortable. Okay.
Okay, then the next thing I do is I drop my arms to the side like that.
Okay.
And then I bend at the elbows only. And kind of put your stick tips together.
Yeah.
So from there, this is important because you want to put the instruments in the locations that are most comfortable. So if you're going to be spending a lot of time on the snare drum, or the hi-hat, or the ride cymbal, you want to put that stuff in comfortable locations. So obviously we're going to be playing the snare drum a lot, so right now you're in perfect playing position for the snare drum and you don't have to do any work. You just have to go up and down. Now take your right hand and put it over on the hi-hat, which is that one over there.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, your right hand though?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're going to cross over. So if you notice that movement, now watch me for a second, go back and forth like this, just between the snare and the hi-hat. So if you go back and forth like that, you'll realize you're not having to move a whole lot. But if you put the hi-hat like where that crash cymbal is, you got to move a whole lot.
Gotcha.
Now the reason why that crash cymbal is where it's at is you're not going to hit that thing too much. So it's okay for it to be kind of out of the way. That's sort of a unique thing. You're not going to go there all the time. Now you can see from the way I have this set up, I don't have to move a whole lot. Like, it's fairly ergonomic. And that's generally how this is set up. Try playing 2 notes on every drum going down. Yeah, do that one more time, but use just 2 notes. Yeah, so you're not having to move a whole lot. Now, for your body, shape and length and all that stuff, you would customize this to fit you.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's important. You want to be comfortable when you play. Drumming's a very physical instrument, so you don't want to put yourself in the position where you're going to get tense or get tired quickly. Drumming's a more physical instrument than a lot of other instruments, so you want to consider those things. So, like the ride cymbal, for instance, like I like to just be able to turn my arm and it just be there, and that's the way I have that set up. The crash cymbal, I might have to reach a little bit for it, but it's not a huge reach. And so the way that you build the rest of the drums, let's say you have more cymbals or more drums, is with all that stuff in mind. You want to be comfortable when you play. It's going to make you happier and it's going to feel better. It's just going to be better overall. You don't want to create any situations that make you tense or hurt your body, or it's just not fun where it is. Looks really have nothing to do with it, but some drummers do set their drum sets up to look a certain way, and I'm not knocking that either. It's a give or take based on what your priorities are, I suppose. Okay, so when it comes to grip, there's a lot of different ways to grip the stick, but generally, we could do it this way. We could say, pretend like you're holding 2 baseball bats, straight, perpendicular with your arm, and that's perfect. And then you put your thumb on the side. Now, what we're going to change is we're going to change this angle. Instead of a 90-degree angle there, we're going to increase it to about 270.
Okay.
Yeah, that's perfect. Now, we're just going to take our wrists and turn them over like this so the palm of your hand is facing down and the back of your hand is facing up. This is good, and you're doing a good job with that. Your wrist works a lot better this way than it does this way. And some people do try to play this way, and I'm not going to knock that, but you don't have as much movement here as you do here.
Yeah, you're
okay?
Sure.
Now, the next thing is your grip is going to be mostly between your thumb and your first finger. Your back fingers really should just be kind of there to cradle the stick. Can you try to do this? Yeah, now don't open your fingers up completely like that. Just open them enough where you have some movement back there. Yeah, there you go. So you want to be generally kind of loose here, but tighter here. And this is just a good general grip. It's like this is how I start everybody out. And then from there, as they develop, we might customize it for them a little bit more or whatever we're doing. All right, next thing we're going to do, we're going to take that snare drum, and on it I just want you to play 8 notes like this. Try doing that. Yeah, now do your left hand the same way. Cool. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to play an exercise called 8 on a hand. We're going to play 8 on the right, 8 on the left, and we're going to keep going back and forth, and I'll make it obvious when we're going to stop.
Okay.
Okay, 1, 2, ready, and go. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 5, 6, 7, 5, 6, 7, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, this last time, and stop. Yeah, perfect. That's how I like to stop the stuff. All right, that's good. So what we just did is sometimes what we might call a legato exercise or a legato stroke exercise or a rebound exercise. You don't want to play drums like you see people, like cartoon characters doing it. You're not bashing stuff. You want to play very, again, it kind of goes back to being ergonomic and how things feel and play and being relaxed and all that. So what you want to do is let the stick do the work for you. You throw it down, and you let it bounce back up. Yeah. So try doing that just around the drums, just like repetitive motion. Yeah, and let it bounce back up. That's a good thing. All right. That's good. Okay, so now let's talk about your foot real quick, and just for the purposes of the fact that I'm recording this, being able to see your foot, I don't know if it can get that far. Yeah, it's pretty good. Okay, so there's generally two ways to play. Can you see my foot from where you are? Mm-hmm. Okay. Two general ways to play. One's called flat-footed, and that's where your foot's completely flat, and you use your ankle just to play like that. So that's one way to play. And then another way to play is what we call heel up. And what you actually do is you take your foot and you pull it back a little bit, and you're on the ball of your foot, and then you use like your whole leg to play. So those are the two general ways to play. I play more heel up. I do use my ankle a little bit when I play heel up, but I play more heel up. I have more power, I have more control when I play that way. You have the weight of your leg to help you with every impact. You know, but I'm not slamming my foot into there like I was talking about the cartoon characters in the drum set. I'm not slamming my foot in there. There's a lot of shock absorption going on here. Now, the reason why I don't play heel down is my ankles have just never been developed enough for me to feel comfortable doing this, and then you also end up using a lot of shin muscle, which I find for most people is not comfortable. But there are some people who play very well that way. Yeah. So what I like to tell people is, experiment with both, see which seems more comfortable to you, and then, gradually settle on a technique and go with it.
It's the same thing for the hi-hat.
Yeah, same thing for the left foot, pretty much.
Okay.
Okay, so what we're going to do is start getting into this a little bit. I can see you're missing some pages, but that's okay. So, basic drum set reading. And something I do like to address, too, especially with adults, is, I get lots of adults that come in here and they're like, I don't want to learn how to read music, I just want to learn how to play. And kind of my response to that is, well, if you want to learn how to play, let's be honest, you're not going to sit here and memorize everything I tell you in 30 minutes. Right. So having some sort of ability to read is going to be really helpful. So I don't spend a lot of time explaining like all the note values and what they mean and all that stuff, but I try to visually set it up so that they don't have to memorize everything. They can actually go home and just look at this little transcription that's all really counting based. And it's pretty straightforward, most people find when they look at it, and it's a lot easier than people think. So I am an advocate of reading music, but I don't like push it too much. It's as much as people want to get into it. I am also really big on playing by ear. I want people to be able to hear music and hear the drum beats in music and be able to figure out what that is and on some level and gradually develop that as a skill. I'm also interested in people learning how to improvise. I find that some students are really good at reading music but aren't very good at playing by ear. Other students are really good at playing by ear but not very good at reading music. But they always tend to focus on one or the other. And somewhere in the middle is being able to improvise and develop your creativity. I find most students don't get enough influence to do that, so I try to encourage that. And we're not going to get into that today so much, but so the way I see it, there's really three things that you want to develop as a drummer, and you could probably say this applies to all music instruments, is you want to be able to read music, you want to be able to play by ear, and you also want to be open enough and have enough confidence to be able to develop your creativity and explore. Yeah, exactly. Because it's really crippling when you like have someone who's really good at playing by ear, but they can't play in front of somebody because they just lose their marbles. They don't have the confidence for it. And then you have people that read sheet music really well, but same issue, they don't have the confidence to play in front of others and explore their art. So I try to focus on all three of those things, and I'm kind of telling you all that so you can focus on that with your boys as they learn music.
Yeah, I mean, we set the drum kit up in the garage, and they haven't touched a drum in forever, and it's just sitting out there. And we put a ping pong table out there, and so today they played for an hour and a half. Just went out there, and they sounded good.
Oh, yeah?
I mean, just being creative, coming up with little riffs and stuff, and the stuff that you had taught them, they had remembered basic stuff, and then they just added on to it. And I'm like, you guys haven't touched this in years, and now it's just sitting out there, and no one's telling you to play, and now all of a sudden you guys are...
Well, that's how it happens. You know, I remember taking guitar lessons when I was really young. I may have been 6 or 7 even. My dad put me in guitar lessons with some guy, and I guess I wasn't really fond of the teacher because I didn't get a whole lot out of it, and it was kind of boring. So I quit, and then they got me involved in piano lessons, then I quit that, and then I started expressing on my own interest in getting involved in piano lessons, and I did that for a little while, and then I quit, and then when I got into, like, 2nd grade, my parents were like, you're going to be in band. We had band in elementary school where I'm from. You're going to be in band, but you can pick your instrument, and I thought about all the instruments, I was like, well, they all kind of suck. I want to play drums. So I started doing drums, and then I really got into it when they started getting me involved in private lessons. I had a really good teacher that I liked a lot, and I think it's probably, I mean, I'm an advocate of finding a really good teacher. That's an important thing, but I would almost say it's almost more important to have a good teacher that inspires you. Yeah. Like maybe if their skill set isn't super superior, but if they can inspire you to want to play and get better, like that's a really hot commodity to have, you know, in this business. Okay, so anyway, all that said, what's going on here is you basically have 3 instruments you're dealing with. The top line, where the X's are, that's going to be your hi-hat. Okay. And I think you have enough of a musical background. You know what a measure is and what a line is. Okay, so well, on the top line of this drum music, that's going to be the hi-hat. So you have 4 X's. You're just going to do this. 1, 2, 3, 4. But use your right hand.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's all that is. And then that note that's on the bottom, that's going to be your bass drum. So what that means is you're going to play the bass drum on beat 1, so you're going to go like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right. Okay, very good. So try number 2, and try playing the whole line the way it's read.
Okay.
All right, try number 3. Good. Number 4. Very good. Okay, so number 5, we start dealing with the snare drum. You have that note floating around the middle, so that just indicates the snare drum. And what's pretty cool about drum set music, is they usually put all the instruments sort of like what they would be visually. You got the bass drum on the bottom, the snare drum in the middle, and the hi-hat up top. So if you can imagine, crash cymbals and ride cymbals would be written even above the hi-hat, and then the toms would be written between the snare drum and the bass drum usually. So drum music is set up that way. You know, we're not dealing with pitches like you would on guitar or piano or whatever. You know, we're just dealing with different lines and spaces representing different instruments that we have on our drum set. So literally, like if you pulled out a book and I didn't tell you anything about it, you could look at it and kind of figure out pretty quick, okay, these are toms, this is a snare, this is a bass. And some, from author to author, some of it might vary a little bit, but usually it's about the same. So try doing number 5. Alright, so let's skip around a little bit. Actually, you know what? We're missing the other page. And I don't have another copy with me. So let's just do this. If you look at, this is what we're going to get to. Okay. Just this one measure here. So you have the bass drum on beat 1, and the snare on beat 3. Okay. Try doing that really slow.
Okay.
And just keep repeating that. So don't go on to the second measure, just that first measure, and treat that like it's its own exercise.
Okay, so just keep going through it over and over again.
And just keep repeating that and get used to it.
Okay.
Okay, so let me pause you for a second. At this point, with someone like yourself, where you're at, I like to talk and educate on, I guess, what I would call practice strategies. You don't want to like arbitrarily just play stuff when you're working on it. You want to have a plan and try to make your practice time as efficient as possible. Most people, I would say, they sit down and they try to play something too fast, and then they get frustrated and then become impatient with themselves and then try to play it faster, and then the whole thing just snowballs into a big emotional mess for the person who's practicing. So I'm a huge advocate of just doing everything super slow while you're working it out. So like a beat like this, it's totally okay to just do this. 1, 2, 3, 4. And at this point, it's so slow, it doesn't really sound like anything. But what we're doing is we're taking the little baby steps of coordinating what's going on. You can always speed it up once you have it down. Most people do the opposite, though. They want to be like, and you know, because they can see I can do this with ease, but I've been doing this for 21 years. And they just want to be there. But they don't realize that at one point I had to do this. You know, while I was working it out. So try doing that again. Like, do it so slow that it doesn't sound like anything, but you know you're getting it right. So what I want you to focus on now is, like, we know you can play it individually. Like, you can play it one time. But you hesitate when you go to repeat it. So play it again, but slow it down some more. And our goal right now is to eliminate that hesitation. Just try to make it smooth, even if it's super slow. Good. All right, you can stop for a second. So that's great. You eliminated the hesitation and got better.
That's cool, because I've been reading a lot about drums, and that's one of the things that's so much different than all the instruments is you have to coordinate your feet, because I'm so used to doing hand things, and I feel very comfortable up here doing this, but then to throw in your feet, I have to almost think about it.
I really honestly believe that anybody can learn how to play drums. The coordination part, I can understand to some people that might seem kind of intimidating or whatever, but it's really not any different than doing anything else. Like, if you want to learn the bowl, you just got to figure out the motions and practice them, or play baseball, or even walk. You know, there's a certain amount of coordination involved with all of those things. Drumming is just another one of those. And I've seen kids like 1, 2 years old that I've taught, they can play the hell out of the drums. And it's not, some of it is a talent thing, some of them just have it, but a lot of it's just like they're growing up with it, just like you would with speech or with walking or whatever it is that you do in your culture. It's that kind of stuff. Well, it's actually really interesting too, is speaking of drumming is, you know, we're growing up in our American Western culture, we're used to hearing lots of different types of rock beats, for instance. But if you grow up in like a Latin American country, this whole tempo thing we're used to, they don't recognize this. This doesn't mean anything to them. They think, in some cultures, in a clave pattern the whole time. Like, the way they think and clap out music is this. And to them, that's how they feel music all the time. So they're looking for this in our Western music and can't find it, and that throws them off, just like that throws us off sometimes when we're not used to it. So it's just pretty interesting. Okay, so we worked it out slow. The next thing I like to tell people is I'm not a big fan of what I call marathon practice sessions. Some people will take a lesson, and over the course of the next week, they won't practice like daily or anything like that. They'll pick like a day and a time and maybe practice for a couple hours or something. But that's like the most inefficient way to practice, because you really do most of your learning in the first 20 or 30 minutes of you sitting down and doing anything. So I'm more of a fan of, hey, practice for shorter amount of times, but more frequently. You know, so with adults, for instance, like what I like to tell them is like, okay, practice for 15 minutes in the morning. If you can do it around lunchtime, practice another 15 minutes and then another 15 minutes before you go to bed. And if you do that like 3-4 times a week, you'll actually totally exceed your teacher's expectations for you, because most people don't practice that way, and that's, in my mind, the most efficient way to practice. But you don't get stuck on that number 15 minutes. It's like, it can be 15, 30 minutes, whatever, but the 2-hour practice session, I'm not a big fan of that. I'm not saying don't do that, because obviously you're still going to get better, But if you have a choice, practice more frequently for shorter periods of time, and your brain's going to retain more of that information, and your body's going to start gaining that muscle memory, so that when you have your next lesson, you have to demonstrate it for your teacher or a performance or something, it's just going to become that much more natural to you because you have that much more repetition over a longer period of time. If you treat your brain like it's a muscle, when you work out, you're tearing muscle fibers, and then you got to let some time elapse so they can heal and be stronger. Well, your brain kind of works the same way. So that's certainly what I found to be the most efficient way to practice, and I tell everybody that, and my students tend to do really well when they do that.
Okay. Definitely.
So I think in our 30 minutes here, we actually covered a lot of really important foundational stuff. That the information I just gave you is enough information to if you wanted to start reading this book at home, you could get pretty far with it.
Now, Tobin, say for example, I wanted to practice at lunch. I usually, every day in my office, and I have one of those little pad things. Just a little thing I could set on my desk with a set of sticks. Would you just do 8 on a hand, or recommend doing that? I mean, I don't have a whole kit, so just to mess around.
So to simulate a drum set, you actually really don't even need a pad, but if you have a pad, that's great.
Yeah, I have one of those little pads.
What I tell people is, set up your pad or even a book or something. Play on the edge of the book for the hi-hat, play in the middle of it for the snare drum, and just stomp your foot on the floor for the bass drum. And what you're doing is you're giving yourself the same coordination exercises that you would be on a real drum set, just obviously isn't going to sound the same, and maybe it's not as much fun as playing on the real thing. But that's a good way to do it, and I always tell all my students, if they're just starting out with their folks, I tell them that same thing, practice this way, use a book or a practice pad or something, and, and they kind of use that to determine down the road a few months into it whether they actually want to buy a full drum set for their kid or not. But that's a great way to practice without a drum set, and it's the most portable version of a drum set that you can have. Yeah. And you can just practice on your legs and stuff, like I'm doing right now. And I practice like that all the time. Well, not anymore these days. A lot of it's in my head. I can listen to music and I know where it's going.
I've been around drummers and they're constantly tapping on stuff.
Well, do you have any questions about anything?
No, this was really cool. Metronomes. Do you recommend using metronomes at all?
As much as you can. Okay. Playing along with music. Most music's recorded with a click track these days, so it's going to have pretty good timing. Even if it's not on a click track, it's still going to have good timing. So practicing along with music will help you develop your timing and your tempo. Practicing with a metronome is definitely a good thing. I do. I would recommend, when you start getting into playing with metronomes and stuff, if you get really serious with working with one, setting up a lesson to kind of go over the different ways you can practice with one. I find that to be really useful. Again, it kind of boils down to using your time efficiently. A lot of people, especially with drums, it seems, they think, I can see what they're doing, I can copy what they're doing on the YouTube video or whatever, and you probably can copy some of it, but there's definitely a lot of value to having a teacher like myself to be able to actually talk to you about, why it's this way, or how it's actually working out, or how to think about things. Because sometimes you can look at a video and you can see what they're doing and maybe replicate it, but you're not getting the nuances that the drummer's thinking about. And drumming, just like anything else, there's sort of a mentor pupil kind of relationship going on there. So you always want to surround yourself with people that are doing what you want to become.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right, and any hints? I mean, I had this out in the garage, and I hit the bass drum or something, and my hearing is going to be gone. So, what do you recommend padding the stuff with so I don't?
Well, anytime you muffle the drums with anything, it cuts down the volume, so that's good. You can stuff the drums with stuff, whatever. I found that just the easiest thing to do is just to buy a set of these pads. You can get them for around $125, $150 for the whole set.
Okay.
Which to some people may seem expensive for what you're getting, but I've had some of these sets that I still use in the studio for 10 years or more. They last quite a while, and they're awesome because you can just pull them off when you want to play with the loud drums, and you just throw them back on when you want to practice quietly. I think it's a valuable purchase, so I'll always recommend that to people. If people want to be cheap, they can throw towels and stuff on them, but then they'll wear out pretty quickly, and they're still not as quiet as these. But it does some of it. But earplugs are a great idea too.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a fan of earplugs.
Yeah, with the boys out there too, they're just wailing. I walked out there when they're playing people. I was like, dude, now my ears are gonna ring.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right, well, cool. So if I play or mess around for the next week or two out of the holidays, how can I do another lesson? Just call you, and what's the best thing to do?
Well, let's walk out front, and I can show you my plans and stuff.
Nah, I was going to write you a check, too.
Alright, I'm gonna